The pension changes that came about in April 2015 are incredibly far-reaching and mean that we will hugely change the way that we use pensions in financial planning. Problem with pensions is they were seen as way too boring in your 20s and potentially a bit late by your 40s to worry about it. And clearly, given all the headlines, all the newspaper articles, all the websites devoted to pensions, suddenly it's got interesting, dare I say it, sexy, and hopefully relevant for a whole new generation of people. When it comes to accessing your pension fund, which clearly has generated the biggest amount of interest and probably words written in papers and on websites, simplest way to put it is that a quarter of it can be tax-free and the rest will be taxed. That sounds incredibly simple, but unfortunately, as with all things, there's been some unintended consequences. One of the throwaway lines from Steve Webb, the ex-pensions minister, was he didn't believe anyone would be off running around buying a Lamborghini. Well, we did some research. The cheapest second-hand Lamborghini is £176,000, but you'd need a £250,000 pension pot to pay for that Lamborghini when you've taken the tax bill into account. Clearly, the changes to pensions have meant that everyone has gone scrabbling through the bottom drawer to find old pension contracts, and you can see that in something like a 30% increase in inquiries to the pension tracking service. And what they then come back with is, and as happened to me last week, client comes along and says, I've got this old scheme, now what do I do? The difference between what the legislation says and what the providers will let you do are two completely separate things. When it comes to these old schemes, what do? The chances are that you might have to look at a pension transfer to a new scheme. And if you were going to do that, you're going to have to be careful around, are there any penalties to leave the old contract? And are there any guarantees or safeguarded benefits that you're going to leave behind? When we look at what happens to your pension benefits when you're no longer here, there were some major changes that occurred. Now, assuming you were wealthy enough and you never touched your pension, you can actually now pass that down through the generations without there ever being a tax hit to that fund. And if you were unlucky enough that the person holding the pension at any point in the future was under age 75, the entire fund could be taken tax-free. The other changes that occurred were to do with who was allowed to inherit the pension fund. So it's no longer spouses or dependents. You can now nominate pretty much anybody you want. And it's quite key that we now look at what happens to the pension fund when you're no longer going to be here. Here at the Fry Group, we've been helping people for over 100 years. So if you have further questions or want some advice, please get in touch.